Midway point, third quarter. Sheldon all over Clark, and they get into it a bit here. Lexi Hall now gets in Sheldon's face. Caitlin Clark hits the deck.
The shrug heard round the basketball world. One photo, one gesture. One moment that crystallized everything we've been watching unfold in the WNBA this season.
That situation was on the referees. Because the referees had just done their job earlier in the game, Sophie Cunningham doesn't have to try take one for the team. Sophie doesn't have to take one for the team. Sophie doesn't have to feel like she needs to get revenge on JC Sheldon. Sophie doesn't have to be an enforcer if the referees just ejected JC Sheldon when they should have ejected her.
Sophie Cunningham didn't just defend her actions on that chaotic Tuesday night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. She doubled down with the kind of unapologetic defiance that either makes you a hero or a villain, depending on which side of the court you're standing on.
Sophie Cunningham got her. Sophie Cunningham got her. And I mean this when I say this. This would have been a flagrant 2, except for the fact that they allowed Marina Mabrey did what she did.
But this isn't just about one hard foul or one heated exchange. This is about the soul of competitive basketball, the unwritten rules of protection, and what happens when those rules collide with the harsh reality of a league trying to find its identity in the spotlight of unprecedented attention. The scene was set like a powder keg waiting for a spark. The Indiana Fever, riding high on a 17-point lead against the Connecticut Sun, should have been cruising to victory. Instead, they found themselves in the eye of a storm that had been brewing all season long. The tension wasn't new. It had been building game after game, foul after foul, non-call after non-call, until something had to give. And when it did give, it wasn't pretty. Midway through the third quarter, with the Fever commanding a 5-5 for 5 advantage, the moment arrived that would define everything that followed. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation who has simultaneously elevated and polarized the league, had possession of the ball when Connecticut's JC Sheldon made a decision that would reverberate far beyond those four walls. Sheldon intentionally poked Clark in the eye, and a shoving match ensued. Sheldon shoved Clark. Clark shoved back, and then Sheldon's teammate Marina Mabrey pushed Clark to the floor.
There's a scrape across the face. That's what Clark didn't like. And then Mabrey came in with a bump.
Yeah, Mabrey's day is almost assuredly going to be done. And it's contact to the face as well. It'd be interesting to know if they're going to look at that first one for a flagrant foul. There was an impact, or there wasn't wind up or follow through, but there was a direct hit to the eye of Clark. Wow, is Mabrey going to stay in this game? That's hard to believe. What do you have to do to get ejected? If sprinting over and knocking a player to the ground in a dead ball situation doesn't get you ejected, what does it take to get ejected?
And you're right. That's a clear definition of it.
Think about that sequence for a moment. The league's biggest star, the player who has brought more eyes to women's basketball than perhaps any other athlete in history, deliberately targeted in a way that could have caused serious injury. The poke to the eye wasn't incidental contact. It wasn't a basketball play. It was targeted, it was intentional, and it was dangerous. But here's where the story gets complicated, where the narrative splits into multiple directions depending on your perspective. The officials, who had seemingly lost control of the game's tempo and temperature, handed out technical fouls like candy on Halloween. Sheldon was hit with a flagrant 1 foul, Clark with a technical foul for her response, Mabrey received her own. Tech and the Suns' Tina Charles, who had run at Clark during the exchange, received an offsetting tech dot read that again. Caitlin Clark, the player who was deliberately poked in the eye, received a technical foul for defending herself. Let that sink in. The victim of a targeted attack was penalized for having the audacity to respond to being assaulted on a basketball court, but the officials weren't done showcasing their complete inability to manage the situation. The game continued, tensions simmering just below the surface, everyone in the arena knowing that the real explosion was yet to come. And when it did come in the game's final minute, it came with the kind of dramatic flair that Hollywood scriptwriters couldn't have imagined. JACY Sheldon, the same player who had targeted Clark's eye earlier in the game, was attempting a breakaway layup when Sophie Cunningham made her statement. Cunningham grabbed her, completely wrapping her arms around Sheldon and stopping her dead in her tracks, and then pulled her toward the floor.
That's a flagrant foul. It's a hard foul. You could say it's a play on the ball, but
It wasn't subtle. It wasn't pretty, it was the kind of hard foul that sends a message that echoes through every arena in the league. You touch our star, you pay the price.
So now let's talk about Sophie Cunningham. At the end of the game, JC Sheldon is going for a fast break layup and Sophie Cunningham is running with her. And I remember in my head, like, it happened in a split second and I said, oh, let's see. Let's see what happens here. Sophie commits a hard foul on JC Sheldon. Again, as JC Sheldon is going up for a layup, Sophie bear hugs her and takes her to the ground. What I will say is Sophie did not grab her and throw her to the ground. She didn't body slam her. She didn't do anything, in my personal opinion. Maybe I'm biased here, but I'm gonna give you guys my straight up honest opinion on this. She bear hugged her, took her to the ground. Yes, it was intentional. It was absolutely intentional. It was, to me, payback for what was happening the entire game.
The chaos that followed was inevitable. Just about every player that was nearby entered into a physical confrontation that ultimately resulted in the ejections. 3 players were tossed from the game in its final minute, including Cunningham herself, Sheldon, and Lindsay Allen. And here's where Sophie Cunningham showed the world exactly who she is and what she stands for. Instead of offering apologies or diplomatic statements about competitive heat, Cunningham did something that shocked the basketball world. She doubled down hard. After the game, she shared an official fever photo of her shrugging, a pretty clear message to Sheldon, the Sun, and the WNBA that shrug wasn't just a gesture. It was a declaration of war. It was Cunningham looking directly into the camera of public opinion and saying, I did what I did, I'd do it again, and I'm not sorry. In an era where athletes are coached to offer carefully crafted apologies for every perceived transgression, Cunningham's defiance was refreshing to some, infuriating to others. The response was immediate and polarizing. Fever coach Stephanie White, clearly fed up with what she perceived as inadequate officiating throughout the season, used her post-game press conference to launch a blistering attack on the referees.
I'll take the official questions. Sure. There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. You know, I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs. It's exactly what you expect, right? Out of fierce competition. So I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. So they got to get control of it. They got to be better. They got to be better.
White exclaimed, her frustration boiling over in a way that perfectly captured the sentiment of everyone who had watched Clark become a target throughout her rookie season. White's anger wasn't about one game or one call. It was about a pattern of behavior that had allowed opposing players to treat Clark like a pinata while officials stood by and watched. Everybody's getting better except the officials. We need to remedy that, White added, calling out the league's failure to protect its brightest star, but Connecticut's coach Rashid Mazian saw things differently. His take on Cunningham's foul was scathing in its criticism, calling it both disrespectful and stupid. For me, it's just disrespectful. To do that foul when you were winning the game by 17 points. Completely stupid, Mazian told reporters, seemingly oblivious to the irony of criticizing disrespectful play while defending players who had spent the evening targeting Clark. This disconnect in perspective reveals something deeper about the current state of the WNBA. We're watching a league grapple with its own identity crisis, caught between the old guard mentality of letting them play and the new reality of protecting its most valuable assets. Cunningham's actions and her defiant response afterward have forced everyone to pick a side. Are you team protect the star at all costs, or team basketball is a physical game and everyone needs to deal with it? Are you with the enforcer who sends a message that targeting is unacceptable, or are you with the purists who believe there's no place for retaliation in professional basketball? Cunningham is known for her willingness to engage in confrontation on the floor. This is hardly the first time, and it won't be her last, and that's exactly what makes her both valuable and controversial. In a league where many players seem afraid to rock the boat, Cunningham has embraced the role of the enforcer with an enthusiasm that's both admirable and terrifying. Her message is clear: mess with Caitlin Clark, mess with the Indiana Fever, and you'll answer to Sophie Cunningham. There's something beautifully old school about that mentality, reminiscent of the NBA's enforcer era when players like Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason made it clear that certain lines couldn't be crossed without consequences. But we're not living in the 1990s NBA anymore. We're living in an era of social media scrutiny, league discipline, and carefully managed public images. Cunningham's approach flies in the face of all of that, and her doubling down makes it clear she doesn't care about the consequences. The WNBA now finds itself in an impossible position. Do they come down hard on Cunningham, potentially alienating fans who see her as a hero for protecting Clark? Or do they take a lighter approach, essentially endorsing vigilante justice on the basketball court, whatever decision the league makes? One thing is certain: Sophie Cunningham has changed the conversation. She's forced everyone to confront uncomfortable questions about protection, retaliation, and the price of stardom in professional sports. Her shrug has become a symbol. For some, it represents the kind of teammate loyalty that every star player dreams of having. For others, it's everything that's wrong with competitive sports, a celebration of violence over skill. But perhaps most importantly, Cunningham's actions have highlighted just how poorly the WNBA has handled the Clark situation all season long. By failing to adequately protect their biggest star, by allowing targeting to go unpunished, by creating an environment where vigilante justice becomes necessary, the league has created this monster. Sophie Cunningham didn't create this problem. She just provided the solution that the officials and the league office were too weak to implement themselves. Her hard foul wasn't just about stopping a layup or evening a score. It was about drawing a line in the sand and daring anyone to cross. The question now isn't whether Cunningham was right or wrong. The question is what happens next. Will the league finally step up and protect its stars, making Cunningham's brand of enforcement unnecessary? Or will we see more players take matters into their own hands, creating a cycle of retaliation that could spiral out of control? One thing is absolutely certain: Sophie Cunningham isn't backing down. Her doubling down wasn't just defiance, it was a promise. A promise that as long as she's on that court, no one touches Caitlin Clark without paying a price. Whether you love her or hate her for it, you have to respect the commitment. In a league full of calculated responses and diplomatic non-answers, Cunningham's raw honesty is shocking. She did what she did, she's proud of what she did, and she'd do it again tomorrow if necessary. That kind of authenticity is rare in professional sports, where every word is focus grouped and every gesture is choreographed. The shrug heard round the basketball world wasn't just Sophie Cunningham responding to criticism, it was her laying down the law, establishing herself as the protector, and sending a message that will echo through every arena for the rest of the season. Love her or hate her, Sophie Cunningham has made her position crystal clear. And in a world of manufactured drama and artificial controversy, there's something refreshing about someone who simply doesn't care what you think about their choices. The enforcer has spoken. The question now is, who's listening? Don't forget to share your opinion in the comments below.